Hello and welcome to How We Fix Britain on Politics Social. I am Graham Hughes and I'm joined this afternoon, God, get there in the end, by former private sector prison officer Gareth Trickett, who is also Trickett. You're also a fan of the stream, aren't you, of Politics
I am,
Social?
yeah.
So you often see Gareth T in the chat, and along with Chris C and Elle and Diz, John, Scott, and others who are in the chat at the moment. If you'd like to join our friends in the chat, just hit that subscribe button, lovely subscribe button, and wait for 1 minute, and you'll be able to join the conversation. So we're going to be talking about how we fix the prison sector today.
Might take longer than an hour.
Well, the system's in crisis. We're having early releasing, overcrowding, staff shortages, prison officers having sex with inmates. But I don't know if you indulged in that while you were there. And your prison was run by a private company. I found this really interesting. It was run by a company called Sodexo. Sodexo, am I pronouncing that right?
Yeah, it was, yeah. Sodexo. They're a French utilities. They started off in catering and they've gone into facilities management, prisons. They're also massive contractors to the MOD as well. They do a lot of catering, cleaning, and that on their military. But their food was awful.
That's
absolutely
like Yamaha
dreadful.
making trumpets and motorbikes. They've gone and said, we'll do catering
and keyboards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's two random things to put together. No, with the service people. So let's talk, first of all, so you were there 2022, 2024. So the first thing I want to ask about is like staffing, recruitment and training. What was the recruitment process like for prison officers, private officers?
It was shockingly easy to get the job.
Oh dear. That's not good, is it?
If you've got 2 eyes and 10 fingers, I think you can start on Monday.
No training.
I was I'll go on to the training, but this is before when you actually do the application. I literally filled a form in online, and I got an invitation to go for an assessment a week later, and there was a very basic English test.
Yeah.
It was like a comprehension. You can remember from school, you read something, then you answer questions on it, or you write, what does this mean that day? And then there was a very, very basic maths test along the lines of, you get paid £20 an hour, you work 5 hours, how much do you get paid?
Bloody hell.
You've got 50 prisoners, 30 want the vegetarian option, how many don't?
Oh my word.
Yeah,
are you exaggerating here, or was that literally?
I am genuine. No, I am genuinely, that is it. And 5 people managed to fail it.
Wowzers.
And I'm thinking, I'm dyslexic as anything. I got an F in maths, and even I was sat there.
I'm dyslexic as FC UK.
And yeah, I'm the same. and I mean, there was a girl sat opposite me. She was having kittens about this English and maths, and she passed, and I passed. And
oh wow.
We've all found, funny enough, we ended up on the same training party. We both worked in the jail, and we both left at the same time, and we both said afterwards, thank God that's over.
So would you say the training was adequate to prepare people for what they face on the job? So tell us about the training.
Absolutely not. 8 weeks of training is not enough.
8 weeks, okay.
8 weeks, but 8 weeks of training, and I would say 50% of what we learn is no use to man the beast. You might as well. I could have took my cat along and sat it there with my nameplate on, and it probably could have done better. It probably could have been as qualified as I was. Yeah. Some of it, and I don't want to knock the people who train me in any way, shape, or form. Anyone who does the job or provides training, I don't want to knock them, because they were doing the best they could with the resources they had. But what I found is it's almost impossible to fail the training.
Right.
Provided you turn up on time, in the right place at the right time, you're 70% of the way there. There were certain things we had to pass, like they do a week of what we call security week, where you do searching of areas, cells, people. And then when you go on an escort, so you take a prisoner out of the jail to, say, a hospital appointment or a funeral or a wedding, you have different arrangements for cuffing. So it could be said that they're what's called double cuffs. So you would have a set of cuffs like that on both hands, and then you'll be cuffed to an officer. But say that arm's broken, it could be right. Well, with a single cuff then, so you just got one cuff to there, and then you have a separate cuff for say they're having an X-ray. So it's like a lot. I call it as dog leg because it goes from there and it stretches about 15 foot out. It's a long length of steel wire rope, so you can go stand behind the screen or stand at a distance with the old lead apron on.
Oh my god!
Because I got zapped a few times in the X-ray. So I'll probably have about 5.
Oh, because you've been in the same room as the prisoner while they're getting an X-ray.
You've got the gown and the fact, I remember one day I got X-ray 3 times.
Oh my word!
I literally went jail, hospital, back to the jail, picked another one up, back to the hospital, back to the jail, back to the hospital, like that. I think the taxi company was going, woohoo, cheers, quid's in here. So, and by the way, we were actually in a taxi, not a prison van like you think. You're actually in a normal taxi.
What, you're not in a proper, like a paddy wagon or something? Or no?
Nope, okay. Just normal. But there's a specific taxi company whose drivers are heavily vetted. Come and pick you up from the jail. You take the prisoner into the taxi. 2 members of staff to 1 prisoner. Sometimes it's 3. They could be deemed to be. That sometimes I've known to be double cuffs, so the double like that, 1 cuff that side, 1 cuff that side.
That's a particular dangerous.
If they're deemed to, if they're what's known as if they're on what's called the E list, so they present a flight risk, they have to wear the old canary suit. They call it. It's like very brightly yellow and green.
Right.
And if they're deemed to be an escape risk, whenever they're out of the cell, they have to wear that suit, or they could be called what's called E-list escort. So they could have gang connections within the local area, or there could be a high-profile prisoner.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll make no secret of it. Mason Greenwood we had a cell ready for him in case he came into jail. He was actually
who was that?
The footballer, Manchester United footballer. He was he was accused of the R word.
Oh wow! Did he get done?
And
did he go down?
no, the case got dropped, insufficient evidence, but we were ready for him in case he came. And because of him being high profile, he would have been deemed on the E list.
So whereabouts was the jail?
I was a jail called Forest Bank in Manchester. It sits in North Manchester, and it is the main remand jail for the courts in and around the Manchester area. So anyone who is remanded to custody will more than 9 times out of 10 go either there or to HMP Manchester, which is known which has been on Strange Ways.
I thought Strange Ways got closed down, or is that?
No, it's still open. It's still very much open. It just got renamed, that's all. They gave it a new name.
Oh, that'll be why.
Gave it a new name and a lick of paint, and everyone thought, we didn't have a riot there, honest,
That's what they did with Sellafield nuclear power plant, because it used to be called Windscale, and they had a disaster, so they just changed the name. It'd be like Chernobyl just changed its name to Mr. Lovely Place or something. You're like,
it's like there was a road down the road that used to be known as the road no one wanted to live on, so all they did was change the name. The whole people might live there.
So going back to sort of staffing and recruitment and everything, what are the differences in sort of pay, morale, and conditions between the public sector and the private sector?
Now, not much. They are roughly on par with each other. In fact, I would say if you are in higher management in the public sector, you can make more in the private.
Right.
But I would say for a prison officer in the private sector, the public sector, there's about 2-3 grand a year difference.
Right.
But the public sector, their training is a lot longer and a lot more intense.
Okay, so that's what I wanted to ask about. Do you know how long it is?
Yeah, I've known some who started with me, quit, and have now gone to the HMP, and their training is more. I think it's nearly 20 weeks altogether.
Wow. Okay, well, that sounds pretty.
Whereas ours was 8. I mean, we did 7 weeks in the jail, and then 1 week of what's called CNR, control and restraint, and that's where you learn restraint techniques, how to actually get someone under control, and also if you had to go and extract a prisoner from a cell for any reason to get all the what we call the mufti kits, you got all the fancy overalls, the helmet, and the gloves and all that.
Yeah.
And one of the instructors would play the prisoner, and at the time you didn't laugh because it was hard work, because they don't make it easy, and rightly so.
Yeah.
But afterwards, you have a laugh about it. You watch yourself back on video and go, "Yeah, really."
Did you have any prison breaks when you were there? Did you have anyone who got out?
Yes, 2.
Did they
Both
get
made
back?
the night. Yes, one actually was on an escort, and I knew both members of staff that were involved. He actually slipped a cuff in the hospital, made a break for freedom, but unlucky for him, he ran out the jail with 2 prison officers running after him, straight into 8 police officers. And
Shit.
yeah, and to be fair, I knew both members of staff, and it was a bit of a cock up on both their part.
Right.
But I think in some ways they were set up to fail by the jail, putting people on bed watches, because a bed watch is where someone is in hospital and you are with them in the hospital.
Yeah.
So and they're cuffed in the hospital,
Yeah.
which I mean, but both members of staff have been on duty all day and then asked to go on a bed watch. So they've pretty much done a 24-hour duty.
Yeah.
And the guy managed to spin them a yarn and they fell for it. And they shouldn't have done,
Yeah.
but when you're tired, your brain doesn't work at 100%.
Right.
And
I agree with that.
they let it. They took him to an area where he shouldn't have been. He managed to slip the cuff and he legged it out of the hospital, but straight for, unfortunately for him, into 8 police officers who were waiting, happened to just be there for something else. And they wrapped him up very quickly and put him back into our custody, and then very quickly jail ended up with egg on its face. And then the second one actually made the national papers not so long back. Guy had actually gone out having took an overdose in the jail, but what had happened was, because the drugs in his system had caused him to sort of like inflate, if you like.
Yeah.
When he said deflated, they didn't check the security of the cuff. He slipped the cuff and did one out of the hospital, and he was absconded for 2 days until they found him.
Oh wow.
And a third one nearly made it out of the jail. He convinced someone he was an art teacher and not a prisoner. He smeared paint on himself, said, "I'm an art teacher." And nearly made it to the gate. But thankfully, someone was paying attention and went, "Well, hang on a minute. Why have you no keys on you? If you
I love the creativity.
remember." Oh, do you know what? And one thing I will never say about prisoners, they are ingenious as anything.
Because you've got nothing else to do, mate.
You've got time. But I said to half of them, do you know? I said, if you put more ingenuity into something constructive, you'd probably be richer than Alan Sugar.
Yeah.
To get one over on me.
Yeah. But the thing is, in our everyday lives, we don't have that much time to just kind of think.
No.
Like, sort of someone who's like held for 6 days in Cape Verde. I mean, when I was being held there, I was with a load of other people, so it wasn't quite the same. But when I was held in Congo for 6 days, mate, I came up with all the plans to escape. Like, I had like all the fucking plans. I was going to do this. That. Yeah, you were saying earlier about having a stupid bright orange outfit on. I was just thinking, well, I'll just make sure that I did my escape on Halloween. No one will look at me twice. They just think, oh, he's an escape. He's an escape prisoner, isn't he? Oh. And like, no one will call it in. Stuff like that. Anyway, so that's the way my mind works.
But the thing with the staff inside is the number of people who are there. Like I would say, the average size of a training party is upwards of 20 plus. I would say within 3 months you're down to 50% of that.
Yeah.
And then within 12 months, you're lucky if you've still got 5 or 6. The course I went through with was one regarded as one of the better ones. We started with 25.
Yeah.
We finished with 22. Within a year, we had 7 left.
Wow.
There's currently now just 2. There's 2 left now.
So why? Let's get into this. Why? What are the reasons for so many officers leaving? And what would help to retain them? Bit of a 2-part question.
The first problem you've got is that, like I said, the training does not give. You've got 6 weeks in the classroom, and 2 weeks of it is shadowing on the wing, and usually try and put you on the wing you're going to work on. Now, I was actually put on the wing housing prisoners that are known as vulnerable prisoners, or as we know them, sex offenders. And the difference between a sex offender and a prisoner on the main is totally different. You do get drugs and violence on a VP wing. Even people say, "Oh no, it doesn't happen." It does happen, but to a lesser extent. It's a lot calmer. You'll go on to it, and it's almost quiet. It's like just people having a normal day, but in a prison. And when you lock them up, it takes you like 2 minutes to lock the wing up because they are far more compliant, but they're also 10 times more manipulative. On the mains, first time I went onto a main wing, I thought I walked into a rebel. I thought I was like revisiting Afghanistan again. I was like, what the? bloody hell have I walked into here? You know, there was, it was just louder, noisy. But having, you know, once I'd done it a few times, you just got used to it. And eventually you learn a thing called gelcraft. It's what's known as gelcraft. And you learn to read a wing when you walk onto it. You can almost feel tension in the air when you walk onto it. If you walk on, it's quite pleasant because they get into the gym, they get into work, they get an education. Excuse me. They get in their normal routine. Things are a lot more calm, a lot more compliant. When they're not getting the regime because there's not enough staff, is when the tension starts. And having spent a night in a police cell, I can totally empathise with someone who's stuck in a prison cell for 23 hours and only getting out for 1 hour. You're gonna go stir crazy after a while.
Yeah,
you know, it's the the reason people are leaving is they don't get you ready for what you're going to see. You've got to be hardened in many ways, which is why I think a lot of ex-military go into the prison system.
Well, you're ex-military, aren't you?
Yeah, I am. Yeah, I did 14 years in the army.
14 years.
In many ways,
bloody hell.
So I did. When I came out of the army, I went truck driving, and I fancied a challenge, so I thought, "I'll give the prison service a go." You know, and Sodexo were readily recruiting. Now I know why, because they're always after staff because people don't stay.
Yeah.
I mean, they're still advertising now. You can go online now, and they're advertising all the jails that they run.
How does this staff turnover affect daily operations and like prison safety?
It can be horrendous because the way the prison is staffed, you have what are called PCOs, prison custody officers, at the bottom of the chain.
Yeah.
And you're known as blue badges because your name badge is blue. You then have senior prison officers who are known as red badges because their badge was red.
Yeah.
And you're supposed to have gold standard on each wing, 6 members of staff, 1 senior, 5 PCOs. You'd be pretty much saying 5 because the way the jail worked, you had 8 wings, A to H. And then each wing was divided into 1 and 2, but they were separated from each other. And each wing so like, say for instance, A1, you would have cells at the bottom and cells on second landing. And then upstairs, you'd have the same again. And when it was association, when they were out of the cells to have their association time, which is they can get out, play pool, watch telly, do whatever they want to do for a few hours. You should have 3 staff on that landing.
Yeah.
The other wing will be locked down, and all you'd have out is your cleaners and your painters. So certain prisoners on the wing would have cleaning jobs, and their job would be to do all the cleaning. You'd have one guy who would do the laundry, another guy would be in charge of what's called decency, so he'd make sure that you had enough cleaning supplies and tell you what you needed to order. You'd have 2 painters who'd go around doing bits of painting, that paint cells, paint the bars and that. And then one of them would be known as the number 1. He'd be number 1 cleaner, and he, in a way, became an extension of your right arm.
Right, and this is a prisoner. Is this a prisoner?
They were your cleaners. If you had good cleaners, were like trusted confidants in a way. They stopped. People weren't picked for the cleaning ability. They were picked because they had something about them.
Right.
Because a lot of cleaners, even though they're criminals and even though they're probably more dodgy than anyone else, stopped a lot of trouble before it started.
Right, because you saw it coming.
I always remember on one wing goes on, the cleaner on there was the nastiest son of a sod you could ever wish to meet.
Yeah.
I got on with him fine, and I used him to stop so many problems.
Oh wow.
So I didn't have to do any paperwork. I'll just say, "Can you just have a little word in his ear?"
Yeah.
And he would have a word. And then the second time it might be behind the door and it might end in ouch. And then the third time I might need to go and get healthcare involved.
Oh wow.
But
so you're relying on prisoners to do the job that you're getting paid.
Yeah, because there's 3 of you and there's 97 of them.
Yeah.
I'll tell you how good cleaners can be. On one wing, when it kicked off royally, there was a female member of staff and she slipped, and 3 of the cleaners dived on top of her, and they took an horrendous kicking.
Yeah.
But they saved a member of staff.
Oh wow. Wow.
And a lot because some of them have morals. This is one thing I do want to say about prisoners. They might be in jail for committing a crime, but some of them have morals. They don't believe in starting. They'll fight each other, but especially with female staff, they're regarded as no, that's a no-go area. You don't do that.
Yeah.
And these three lads dived on top of it, and they took an absolute. But I'll tell you what, for a month afterwards, they could walk on water as far as we were concerned. They got away with absolute murder.
Well, not actual murder, I hope. But
No, not actual murder. No.
So what would a typical day look like on a residential wing of?
You would open up at 7:30. You'd book on duty if you were on a morning shift, because our shifts were, you had an early shift, a late shift, and what's called an A shift. So you'd be in all day till 8 o'clock at night. You book on at 7:15, go draw your keys and your radio, and what's called your fish knife, which is a cut down tool for anyone that's tried to hang themselves. You could just cut them down pretty quickly, but it's shaped like a fish, so hence why it got its name. Make your way to your wing, sign on the radio, get on the wing, have a quick brew. We'd have a quick chat about anyone that's on what's called an act book, which is anyone's at risk of suicide or self-harm. We would have to do checks on them. It could be 1 an hour, it could be 2, 3, 4, up to 5. Could be constant watch, so you'd actually have someone follow them everywhere, or at least have line of sight on them.
Yeah.
Some are on what we call conversations. So you just go up and have a quick chat with him morning and night. Everything all right? Yeah, no problems. And some could be in what's called post closure. So the book had been closed.
Yeah.
But you still kept an eye on them for a little while. And so we'd work that out. Anyone that's going to court, we'd get them off to reception so they could wait for the ship out to court. And then at 7:30, we would unlock the wing. And this was every wing in the jail would be unlocked. And they would have 1 hour to do their ablutions, so get a shower, clean the cell, get any cleaning supplies they need.
Why was everyone allowed out at the same time? Wouldn't it make more sense to sort of stagger that?
It was done because in the morning you didn't have any escorts going out, and you also had spare staff on hand.
Right.
You generally have more staff in the morning, so what they would do is let everyone out. So you'd have all your wings would be staffed with, because they would get people in on overtime. Usually the members of staff who worked in other departments, one would come in and fill in that. So you had 3 members of staff on each wing. You'd also get everyone out for half an hour's exercise, but that would be staggered. So not every wing came out at the same time, because in the middle of the jail we had a circular called the hub, and that is where everyone had to sort of transit through to go into the rest of the jail, if they were going to work or education or chapel or the gym. So we'd let them onto the exercise sort of a wing at a time, if they wanted it. If they didn't, depending on the weather, if it was a nice day, 2 or 3 might. And also the real phys heads would go out and do like circuits on the yard.
Right.
So you see them out running and doing circuits and that.
Yeah.
So they have that period of time to do their bits and bats, and then at 8:30 you lock them up then until 9 o'clock. And at 9 o'clock, what would happen is,
so you'd be locked up for half an hour.
Pretty much, yeah. Okay. You'd lock the wing back up again.
Yeah.
And then what you do then is you get the VPs used to go to work first, so you put a freeze on the prison, so no standard prisoners came out. Yeah. And the VPs would go down to their workshop and then get locked into it, so they were separate from the rest of the jail.
When people got up at 7:30, did they have to leave the cells, or could they have a line?
No, they want to stay. They want to stay in bed. They can stay in bed. You don't.
Oh, that's
if you want to sleep your sentence away, be my guest. But if you don't get up and go to work, you don't get paid, and you're on £2.50 a week.
Wow.
Unless you can get your family send you money in.
That's slave labour, isn't it?
That's the way. Don't go to jail.
Well, yeah, that's true. don't do bad things.
And then if you once you got your wing off for work, or those who are going to work in education are gone.
Yeah.
If they were on the lower levels, they would have their association in the morning, so they out play pool, do whatever they wanted to do, and that. If you were on the higher ones, you'd then be locked out, and all you leave out is your cleaners.
Right.
So your cleaners would come out and do their bits and bats. Then the afternoon, it would go the other way around.
Right.
And they'd all, then the ones would be locked down, the twos would be out.
When do they eat? I mean, do they eat when they first get up in the morning, or is that?
Their breakfasts were usually cold breakfast, cornflakes or Rice Krispies, and they get a cereal pack the night before. So they'd have a bag of Rice Krispies
Okay.
and a carton of milk and a brew bag. So they'd have some like tea, coffee, sugar inside a little like cardboard bag. And each one would get 2 brew bags and a cereal pack at
Yeah.
tea. So when they collected a tea, they'd pick their breakfast up.
Right.
And then, because when they come into the jail, they get given a bowl, a plate, knife, fork, spoon, and a cup,
Right.
and that's theirs to take with them. Then when they leave the jail, it gets whizzed,
Are they
or they can
metal?
take it
Are
with.
they metal?
No, plastic. They're
Plastic.
all plastic. Yeah, there's very little things in that jail that are made of metal that a
Yeah.
prisoner can get their hands on.
I was gonna say. So with the. But what about hot? What about hot drink? Now, I mean, you throw a bloody scalding hot
They've got kettles in
cup of
they
tea.
have kettles in themselves. They're kettles in themselves,
Really?
and yeah.
Fucking hell! Was there some like? I mean, I could imagine someone having a fight, and there you go, have some fucking boiling water,
Oh, hot
mate.
water. I got hot water twice.
Fuck! That's a really
I
bad
had
idea. Did no one say that's a really bad idea? Give them lemonade. I mean,
well,
I know
believe
I
it or not,
love tea. I love tea, but I don't know if it's a human right.
yeah. I mean, believe it or not, we threw sugar. Well, they stopped them getting sugar
Yeah,
for 2 reasons. One, because they were using it to brew hooch, and
yeah.
two, because they were using it to make Molotov cocktails.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, sugar and water, because
Yeah,
that sticks on people.
yeah.
Yeah,
And,
so
and
they stopped they
yeah,
stopped sugar because of that.
I
They
heard
used to be able
that
to
they get
buy. They
fruit
used to
and
be
they
able
put it
to
on the windowsill because it
fruit
ferments.
bread,
Yeah.
tomato ketchup. You make alcohol out of that.
Wow. See, enterprising.
I know, but the
We
thing
need to
is,
talk about
it gave us a very,
rehabilitation in a moment, but yeah.
yeah. That's the next bit. But
Well, before we get to
yeah.
that, we're still talking about our day. So, what time is it that they all have to be back in the cell, and that's it? No.
So like say at 9:30, you would lock up. If they were staying locked up, they'd be locked up then until 12 o'clock when they come out for the dinner,
Yeah,
and they get half an hour out for the dinner. Then at 12 o'clock, then if they were out for association, they'd be out all
yeah,
morning till you were supposed to lock them up at 12 o'clock. Now it depended on the wing. Some wings did, some wings didn't. I used to look at personally, some wings are very regimented on it. Others say, well, they're behaving, so we'll just go and get one of us will go and get the trolley. You might take a cleaner with you to go and get the trolley
yeah,
that had the food on. Bring the trolley up to the wing, and then on the wing you had a servery. So you put the trolley in the servery, and the first thing you do is count the food to make sure the
yeah,
kitchens, hadn't swiped any.
yeah,
And then you make sure you had the right portions of what you're supposed to have. Then they were supposed to line up, but it tended to be like a free for all. So that's where your cleaners came in handy to get them to like get lined up, or no one's getting fed.
right,
And then each
right,
person got ticked off what they because what they do is they choose their meals on what it's like a key. We have a thing called a kiosk, which is it's like a computer, so you can choose your meals for the week.
yeah.
They'll give you like 2-3 options on the day, and you can choose which one you want,
Yeah.
and then same for your evening meal.
So,
So
what
the
time? What time was evening meal? That was about like 6 o'clock.
evening meal was 4:30 till 5 o'clock.
Oh right, okay, quite early, and then that's
Yeah,
it. Do you get put in? Do you get to do stuff in the evening, or are you put back in
they
yourself?
used to do evening association
Yeah.
for certain wings, but because of staffing problems, that
Right.
got
I was going
that
to
got
come to this
kiboshed.
because it's not just staffing problems, is it? It's overcrowding. So, what are the
Yeah,
consequences of overcrowding for both prisoners and the staff that are working there?
yeah. Well, one of the consequences is, I'll give you an example. At one point in the jail, we had 7 bed watchers, so 7 prisoners in hospital, 2 of which were long-term prisoners
Right.
who weren't going to come back. One, two, three of them died while I were in the jail.
Oh,
Who
nice.
had long term health conditions, things like
Yeah.
cancer
Yeah.
and other ailments. When they're at sort of like end of life, you usually just have one member of staff watching them, but you're there ultimately to make the phone call back to the jail.
Right.
That's your soul, but they're not cuffed up, and you do treat them with a little bit of dignity, even if they're the most repulsive person in the world. everyone's entitled to a little bit of dignity at the end of their life. And all you'd say if any visitors come in, just that they were allowed to use phones.
But that's
So you'd have to.
7 police officers that need,
That's
prison
40.
officers that need to
That's
be sitting
40.
in.
That's 14 prison officers because
14
most of
prison.
them,
Oh,
and then also times that by 2 because you've got to staff it in the night as well.
yeah. Shit.
So
that's 28 people needed.
that's 28 staff needed every single day.
Yeah, to be
because
in
there were
hospital.
7 bed watchers. Yeah. No, it was a good way. I'll be honest with you. Bed watchers were a cracking way to make overtime because the prison estate runs on overtime and goodwill because there isn't enough staff.
Sounds like the NHS, mate.
Yeah. Well, above the senior prison officers, you had a guy called Oscar, and they were like a senior prison officer.
Yeah.
And Oscar's job was to make sure the jail was staffed.
Right.
And I likened his or her job to imagine, them vases we got all the water coming out the holes. And as quick as you're plugging a hole, another one appears.
Yeah.
That was their job. And there was 6 of them. One of the Oscars he permanently did nights. Mainly because he was a very angry man who would happily snot people, but he was also an absolutely brilliant. I will say this on the flip side, a brilliant bloke to work for who had your back and would defend you to the hilt.
Yeah.
But he absolutely hated prisoners with a passion, so hence why we put him on nights. The other 5 were, without a shadow of a doubt, 5 people I'd work for any day of the week because every time there was a response, or say a fight broke out, or someone went over the bars on a wing, or threatened an act of suicide, they would respond in person and then decide whether it needed more staff or you had to get every spare person in the jail up.
Yeah.
Because we did have a couple of times where wings went and it was I think the biggest turnout we had was just short of 50 members of staff on one wing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it really kicked off.
Well, we're going to come back to this in a moment, but I just got a super chat in. Thank you. First one of the evening off Ivan. Thank you very much, Ivan. That's really kind of you. Question to Gareth. Do you have confidence in the government's plans for prisons with regards to prison places and prison building? We were going to come to this, but if you want to answer it now.
I think whichever party is in... Unfortunately, we are suffering from... Was it you call it, Graham? ABCT, austerity, Brexit, COVID, and trust.
Yeah.
We're suffering. This is the effects of austerity. When you cut a third of prison officers out the estate, who are the experienced staff, because this is one of the problems you've had. You've cut a lot of experience. Because what they did when they came in, the coalition, so I'm not using the Lib Dems to blame on this one either.
Yeah.
They thought, right, we'll make cuts. They offered all the experienced staff who were on big wages.
Yeah.
Redundancy,
because they could get people in who were younger, but they were cheaper, but they didn't realise all that experience was going out the window. They were getting rid of millions and millions of hours of experience.
Yeah, exactly. And what you were supposed to happen when you went to the jail was you would shadow an experienced man. They'd be your mentor and your guide, and you'll learn from them because they've seen it, done it. One of the biggest problems you've got is a lot of young people coming in who've got no life experience.
Yes.
And they've got no people skills.
Yeah. Someone mentioned this earlier in the chat, saying you've got young lads,
Yeah, and young girls as well. And a lot of young females coming in, and they're very, very open to manipulation.
Yes, as we've seen.
As you've seen with the videos, and I know it went on in the jail I worked at because they were just allowed to resign very quietly. It never made the papers.
Fuck. It only made the papers because it was on the CCTV.
Because they were stupid enough to allow it to video. No, that one was the one he Wandsworth. He was videoing it on a mobile phone.
Well, I haven't seen the video. I just heard about
it. Yeah, but I've seen the video because it got circulated around the prison. But
Jesus,
I'll give you an example of how manipulated one member of staff was. Her dad works in the jail, so she should have known better.
Yeah.
And I felt sorry for her dad because her dad was a really good member of staff, and he'd got her the job.
Yeah.
And then she went and took one for the team, shall we say?
Jesus Christ. Okay, so so this is talking about what the coalition government did, but what about Labour going forward? They said they're going to build new prisons. They're going to have another 1,600 places or something. Do you have confidence in making things better?
It's great, but it's going to take time.
Right.
It's going to take time, and I don't think it'll either be a Labour, a Conservative, or God help us if it's Reform.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter how many jails you build, you need to staff them.
Yes.
And you've got to start getting people in jails who've got people skills.
Yeah.
It's no point asking young. I personally, if it was down to me, think you should be at least 21, if not even 25, and had a job before you come into the jail. It should not be
Yeah.
straight out of school, go and work in a prison. It is, you need to have people skills, because one of the biggest weapons you've got is this: talking your way out of a problem, talking someone down. Because one of the other problems you've got is a lot of people who don't speak English
Yeah.
get it. And one of the problems we had in the jail staffing wise were, and I do not want anyone to think this is a racist comment, but we were getting a lot of foreign people who weren't English. They were coming from abroad, and they obviously got the right to work here and whatnot.
Yeah.
But they were trying to run the jail. They were trying to be a prison officer how you would in another country.
Yeah.
One of the biggest problems we had one lad come to work on my wing, and he was very, very educated, very smart. He had degrees and all sorts. But he was talking to prisoners like he was if he was in a jail in Africa, where in his mind, I wear a uniform, you will respect me because I am a prison officer and I
Right.
have this uniform.
Yeah.
And like I kept reminding him, it's a uniform, not a gum shield.
Mm.
These guys, a lot of these guys don't respect police officers. They don't respect high court judges.
No.
Where do you sit in their list of priorities?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
Also, we got a super chat in from Sarah. Oh, thank you so much, Sarah, for the £2. Huge thanks to you, Tan, and Mike for the photo. No worries. So finally winged its way to Wales. It took a while, didn't it, Sarah? Bloody hell, we posted it like 2 weeks ago.
hi, Sarah.
So thanks very much.
Yeah, I don't want to say hi to Sarah in the chat, so hi, Sarah.
Yeah, if anyone else has got any questions, whatever, just put them in. Hopefully, we'll get through as much as we can.
Yeah,
there's a lot to get through.
Yeah, I say just to clarify, over the bars means around you have a set of bars around the sort of first landing.
Yeah.
If anyone went the other side of the bars, and that was called over the bars.
Right.
So they go over the bars for varying reasons, and then you'd often have to get the what we called it the bouncy castle. It was a big blow up like air cushion, and then you put anti-climb bars either side of them to contain them. And
Right.
9 times out of 10, within 5 minutes they'd get down. The longest I know one was up there was 7 hours.
Bloody hell.
Yeah, he was in for the long haul. The national team came out. These guys are like the SAS of the prison world. They sweep in, sort a problem out, and then leave.
What can I ask about your military work? What position were you? What rank were you in the army?
I was a corporal in the Royal Engineers.
Okay.
I
So as
worked
a corporal
predominantly.
NCO, is that an NCO?
Yeah, I was an NCO. Yeah.
Okay.
We had quite a few guys and girls.
Yeah.
Had a military background. I would say at one point about a third of the staff were ex-military.
Yeah. But you'd already been in that position where you're having to diffuse tense situations. You've got to be a diplomat. But you've also got a team that you've got to work with and tell people what to do.
Yeah, and it was always good when you had one of the problems they had because of the turnover of staff, and you were getting a lot of inexperienced staff.
Yeah.
At some points, you end up on a wing where you had inexperienced staff with inexperienced staff.
Yeah.
And that is a complete recipe for disaster. It happened to me when I'd only been what's called gone live. So I'd done my shadowing and I'd started.
Yeah.
And I was deemed competent to go on the wing. And I was on with another girl who she had a grand total of 6 months in the jail. I had a grand total of 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And we were to just
left to it.
We were left to it.
Oh,
and
fucking hell.
What could have gone wrong that morning? What could have gone wrong did go wrong.
Yeah.
We got through it with the help of the cleaners.
Yeah.
If it hadn't been for the cleaners, we were both looking at each other ready to quit by dinner time.
Wow.
As it were, about 6 months later, we looked at each other and just laughed because we were both ended up back on the same wing.
Yeah.
Working together. We're still the same cleaners because they hadn't been moved on. And we were like, actually, it's not too, because by that point, you'd found your feet.
Yeah.
And you kind of roughly knew what you were doing. And we laughed about it and thought it was hilarious. But that honestly, that by dinner time, we were both like, "Oh my god, what could go wrong did
And
go wrong."
this is contributing to the very quick turnover. So you got the lack of experience, dropping people in at the deep end.
Yeah.
Pay. I mean, was it okay,
Yeah.
or was
Well,
that something that
you're
could do?
talking a starting wage of 31.5 grand, which
Yeah.
in the grand scheme of things isn't bad. But
No, it's not bad. It's more than I
lack
earn on this
lack
channel. Super chats are open. Go on.
the grand super chats. I do. But no, I mean, you think, all right, the pay is not bad, but
Yeah.
it's the amount of work you've got to put into it. Even when you
Right.
had a rest day, I was still sleeping half the day. I was knackered because
Yeah.
it's mentally
Yeah, because you're
as
always
well.
on. You must always be on edge. You must always be thinking, shit. Could it kick
Yeah,
off? Or
yeah. Well, you've got to constantly like I play it like a game of three-dimensional chess because you're watching what they're doing, why are they doing that? Is
yeah,
that a distraction?
yeah,
So you are watching, and as you sort of found your feet, you got a little bit less on edge. But in jails, when it goes,
yeah,
and it can go over stupid things like I didn't get enough chips for my dinner. But also, a lot of things that contribute is because like Sodexo exists to make money. It's a private company.
yeah,
Now they get paid per prisoner. So it always pays for them to have the jail full.
yeah,
So one of the things they brought in as a sort of incentive to behave, they had one wing where you would be on basic regime. So you had no telly,
wow,
you only got your £2.50 a week. You got out for your breakfast, your dinner, your tea, and a shower, and a bit of exercise. No association. But because it was that bad, people didn't want to go on that wing, so
yeah,
violence reduced. So that wing wasn't occupied, so they had empty beds.
yeah,
Well,
yeah,
all of a sudden, they're not making money, so they did away with it.
right,
And
right,
then all of a sudden, you're back to that situation of we're full.
yeah,
And one of the problems can be is, say you got two prisoners in a cell, one's on basic and the other's on standard regime. Because you have three regimes: basic, standard, and enhanced. When you came into jail, you were on standard, which meant you were entitled. It was like it works on how many visits you're entitled to and what you could spend on in the canteen
yeah,
and that. If you're on basic, you basically got nothing.
yeah,
So you could have prisoner A's on basic, prisoner B's on standard, but you can't take the telly off them because you'd be punishing the other guy.
yeah, yeah,
So that's one of the problems you had. You had to try and then move people around, and
yeah,
they'd be like, "Well, I don't want to move. I'm quite comfy in my cell." It's like you say to the standard guy, "Well, can you move in with him over there?" Well, I don't want to move. I'm quite happy. So it creates that tension again.
yeah, yeah,
And one of the other dramas you got was when prisoners refused transfer. So obviously, Forest Bank's a remand jail. So once you're sentenced, you're then eligible to be shipped anywhere in the prison estate. And you
yeah,
told them where they were going. I'm not going there. And then you go to team kit up, so you get all the kit on, ready to go. Go in, grab them, cuff them up,
mm.
rag them down to reception by legal means, get them searched, get them ready to go on the bus, and the receiving prison goes, "No, we don't want them." So then you're stuck with them.
Right. But I mean, it's a remember so before people are going on trial, while they're going on
Yeah,
trial, they'll be held in the
yeah.
prison that you were working in. But then once they are sentenced, there's also people who have been actually sentenced going to that
Yeah,
prison. And if they live
yeah.
locally, they're not going to be wanting to be sent
No,
off
they're not
to
going to want to go to,
Wandsworth or Dartmoor or
yeah,
somewhere mad.
but like some people got what's called because we were Cat B. A remand jail is Cat B. So you got A, B, C, D.
Yeah.
A being the highest. Then above A, you've got double Cat A, which is your maximum security.
Right.
So you're talking like your terrorists and your very serious offenders
Yeah.
go into
Serial
the maximum
killers.
security.
Not all
Yeah,
boomers. Not all boomers. So I thought I'd say that because I did mention serial killers. They seem to
and
be a
then you've got
dying breed these days. Too old.
your Cat A, which is your high security.
Yeah.
Cat B, which was remand. So pretty much in Forest Bank, I had people from murder all the way down to benefit fraud.
Right.
And but then below, a lot of people went to Cat C jails, so they were actually going down a category a little bit more secure.
Yeah.
Some even went to Cat D, which is an open prison where you are you're still in prison, but you are you've got a lot more freedom.
Is that where we put the rich Tories so they can play tennis and stuff? Like in The Wolf of Wall Street, where he goes to an open prison. John, thank you so much for the £2 super chat, mate. Super interesting, says John. Thank you. I think it's talking to you, Gareth, more than me. I'm just asking stupid questions. And Ivan, thank you very much for the £10 super chat. We know age factors work both ways. Prison officers who are young have been mentioned, but the opposite side, some are calling for the retirement age of officers to be reduced. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I'll tell you a true story now. The training course after mine, they took a guy on who was 61. He was deaf in both ears and had reduced eyesight, and they expected him to work on a prison wing.
Oh, wow.
And it was only when he didn't hear an alarm and didn't see a fight going on in front of him that we were like, why has this guy got a job? And he's a lovely, lovely guy, by the way. Absolutely brilliant guy.
Yeah, but...
And they were then going to sack him, and we went, hang on a minute, you give him the job.
Yeah.
He declared that he has hearing problems and eyesight problems. You give him the job.
Yeah.
So they had to then offer him an operational support role. So he went and worked in the gatehouse, issuing keys and radios and taking in deliveries and things like that.
Yeah.
But you were thinking, is this what the recruitment's like? You're taking someone on who's ready for the retirement home. He was a lovely guy. He still is. I still speak to him, but you're like going, well, how have you got a job when you're ready for retirement?
It is a bit of a mad one, isn't it? Well, thanks for the question there, Ivan, and thanks for the super chat.
Yeah.
So,
Ivan, have you robbed a bank, by the way? You've got very deep pockets, mate.
Ivan needs to know the answers on a few prison questions because he's got something planned. Me and Ivan, we're plotting behind the scenes, taking down the system from within.
That's all.
It's the only way to be. So just before we go on to talk about sort of reoffending and rehabilitation, how does do you see any difference, any sort of material difference between prisoners who go to private jails and prisoners who go to public jails?
A lot of the guys all said the one thing about they didn't like about Forest Bank is there's very little opportunity to do any kind of purposeful activity because it is a remand jail. It's a big sausage factory, effectively. But it moves humans rather than products. You're literally getting them in, getting them through the court system as quick as the court system allows them to go, because we're still now in 2025, still facing the backlog from COVID and the CPS strike. We're still feeling the knock-on. There was one guy, he was only tried and sentenced. Was it beginning of last year? Beginning of last year.
Yeah.
And he'd been arrested during COVID.
Oh wow, Jesus, that's 5 years ago.
But he did get a life sentence. So it's not really going to.
Well, he'll get 5 years off his life sentence. But this brings us on to the next point of talking about reoffending rehabilitation. Yeah. So did you say that in the private jails you just don't get as much training? There's not many options for learning in the private jail?
There is options for education and employment, but you've got to meet a certain criteria. So when you come into the jail, you've got to kind of like do a few weeks of sort of settling in. But and in some ways, I do agree why they do it. They don't just let anyone go for education and employment, because if, say, they've got a record of assaulting staff or other prisoners, you're not then going to put them in a classroom with a teacher and only one. No. Because in the classrooms, it was civilian teachers who they were given some training to defend themselves, but you only had one prison officer up there to supervise education.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the really annoying things were they expected us to do a thing called key working, where you were supposed to have a group of prisoners who were your people, and you're supposed to spend time talking with them about how they're finding the jail and do a report on it. But you never had time because you were either doing bed watches or you were tasked on another wing, or you might be on nights, and then you get moaned at while you're doing key work, and you're like, well, can I find time?
Yeah.
And I even got told, why don't you do it on your day off? And I went, are you going to pay me?
Well, exactly. But there you go. So,
You know.
I mean, we've got a lot to get through. I don't know if we're going
Yeah,
to
yeah,
sort of
yeah.
get
No,
through all this stuff.
I could be here for I could be over hours talking about this.
I've got to make dinner. But yeah,
So that.
such a professional outfit. This Politics Social. We have little animations and everything. But yeah, so would you say that the meaningful access to sort of education, work, therapy, drug rehab programs is not as good in a private
No,
jail as it is in a public jail?
no, it's not. I don't always. I can't speak for the public jails because, and I do believe they're in a similar situation that they don't have enough people to provide the meaningful activities because of staffing.
Yeah.
I've heard of similar stories in the public. I can't hand on heart say it, but I certainly am a big believer that everyone who goes to prison should be tested for literacy and numeracy because the number of illiterate and innumerate people in jail is unreal.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I personally believe my personal feeling would be one thing they should do in jail is work for a wage.
Right.
So earn money by doing education or vocational training. So maybe teaching brickwork, plumbing, painting and
Yeah.
decorating, forklift driving, something like
Yeah.
that. But when you're getting ready for the sentence, but pay them a wage. But without
I
that
completely
wage,
agree with you, mate. I couldn't agree more on
what
this.
what I would do out of that wage is say, right, I'm going to take so much off you, and I'm going to put that in a bank account, and you're not going to see it.
Yeah.
And when you leave the jail, there's some money there for you,
Yeah.
so you can. By the way, my son has now just got on all fours and crawling past the settee so he doesn't appear on camera.
Hello.
Yeah, they're all saying hi, by the way, Jack. Yeah, he says
Hi,
hi.
Jack.
Yeah, I just clocked him at the corner of my
No,
eye then.
I completely agree on this. But what I would like to see as well is, obviously we've got a huge problem now with people getting off the sentences instead of,
Yeah,
being up for parole in half the
early
time.
release.
Now it's a third of their sentence. They're up for parole now because of the
What
overcrowding.
what we need to break is the circle, I call it. So you've got Joe Bloggs, commits a crime, gets caught,
Motherfucker.
gets sentenced, goes to prison, does half his sentence, gets released at the halfway point, goes to probation, and then for some reason gets recalled to prison.
Yeah.
And what I was finding more and more and more was a lot of recalls within prison. I would say at one point 30% of our population, if not even 40, were recalls, and often for bullshit
For
reasons.
daft
And I
reasons,
was, yeah. I'll give you a key example. We had a guy in his 80s. Now, his crime I don't want to discuss. It wasn't nice, but he was released from jail. The guy had dementia.
Right.
They put him in a bail hostel one side of Manchester and his probation office the other side of Manchester. He couldn't even find his cell.
Oh,
How the hell is he going to find a
fuck.
probation office? Within a week, he was back in the prison system.
Yeah. Yeah.
Had they really helped to rehabilitate him? No,
No.
they set him up to fail.
Yeah.
And I was finding it time and time again that people were getting recalled for missing an appointment by 2 or 3 because they missed a bus. It's a bit
Yeah.
like you hear people getting sanctioned for ridiculous reasons.
Yeah. Yeah.
People are getting recalled. Now, yeah, okay, don't commit a crime, don't come to prison, but don't set someone up to fail.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time, probation are doing it, and I do not have a dig at probation officers because they're in a similar boat to prison. Their caseload, because they were cut
Yeah.
during the austerity years. So you have one probation officer who might say have 30 on the case, suddenly they've got 60, 70, 80, even 90.
Yeah.
They're going to want to find ways to get their caseload down. The easiest way they can do is hit the recall button.
Right. Yeah. That's a good point.
If I became Prime Minister tomorrow, the first thing I would do is take recall off probation
Yeah.
and put it back in the hands of the courts and say, let's have a look at it properly with magistrates,
Yeah.
not one person being judged during executioner. I think that will go some way to reducing the prison population. You will always get reoffending. You will
Yeah.
never. Some people, unfortunately, are just
But
criminally
missing a bus is a
institutionalized.
little bit different
Is
from
a bit different
mugging
than committing a
someone
yeah,
while you're on
yeah,
parole.
yeah. You missed the bus because the bus didn't turn up, or the train didn't turn up, or
Yeah.
your taxi was 5 minutes late. You know,
And it's back into jail.
I've heard these stories. And the thing is, first thing you take it with a pinch of salt, but
Yeah.
you look into it and find, oh, they missed an appointment by 5 minutes. Well, come on, 5 minutes.
Yeah.
All right, you say to them, should have maybe got an early bus, but if it's a one-off, you say, oh, all right, it happens. If they're routinely doing it, then you'd be saying, hang on a minute,
Yeah.
now maybe we need to look
Yeah.
at the problem.
Yeah.
But this is
this is another thing though. The courts are overwhelmed at the moment. We've got cases that, like you mentioned before, they're like taking 5 years to get to fucking court because there's such a backlog because of the Tories, because of 14 years of Tory
cuts. Yeah.
Tory cuts.
I mean, the prisons was an easy target.
The silent N.
You know, it was an easy target.
Yeah.
And this is why, because they have not also, I mean, at the minute, the prison population is just under 90,000.
Yeah.
We've got the biggest prison population per head of capita in Northwest Europe. And
that's Tories, isn't it? You know, tough on.
Yeah, they want to get tough on crime.
Yeah.
And I do get that people want to see someone sentenced for committing a crime. I totally empathise with victims. But one of the things I was going to say, if you paid them a wage, another thing I'd do is percentage of their wage would go into a fund for victims of crime.
Yeah.
So in a way, and I would also bill them for the food and accommodation, not talking all the wage, it's still like 20, 30 quid a week. Yeah. You would then be putting money back into the prison system.
Yeah.
And also this person then is paying tax and national insurance on that as well. Yeah. So you're also putting money back into the system.
Yeah.
It's all right to say, oh yeah, they can earn £2-3 a week. I would maybe say to someone, right, you can earn £300 a week if you work and do education.
Yeah.
But out of that, we're going to put so much money in a bank account for you for when you leave. Because I saw it regularly. People would leave the jail, go to the end of the road with their bag with all the possessions in it. You see them running down the road, happy as Larry, straight to the off license at the end of the road to buy their 3-litre bottle of cider.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they spunk the money up the wall. Where if you say to them, right, you're going to leave here, you're going to go to this approved premises. When you get there, we're then going to give you so much of this money that you saved in prison per week to help you get back on your feet. You would go some way toward rehabilitation.
Yeah. That's a great idea.
And we also need to put money into things like they did a thing called TSP, Thinking Skills Program. And it helped people to basically stop and think rather than using these, or it's a good idea to go and rob a bank.
Well, the situation at the moment, skills. And I've mentioned this on the stream before, is just you get out of jail and you still got no qualifications, and now you've got a criminal record. Good luck.
Exactly.
Before we go on, we've got a couple of super chats. Sorry to interrupt. We've got Chris C. Having been to both, been in both, says Chris C. It's equally poor access to purposeful activity, talking about the private sector and the public sector when it comes to jails. And Ivan, another £5 super chat. Thank you, Ivan. What is the current situation with supporting prisoners with autism, dyslexia, ADHD, and/or mental health conditions and/or physical disabilities?
Non-existent.
Wow.
There
is a lot of crime is caused by people who have mental health problems.
Yeah. There are people who are in the prison system who should not be in prison. And you ask any prison officer or any prisoner, there are people there who should be in mental health care because they are ill. They're criminally ill. They're not criminals. Their illness has caused them to commit a crime. Now, yes, I get that, but the best place for them to facilitate their illness is secure care.
Yeah.
I will give you an example. I mean, you can look the guy up if you want. There was one guy who was that ill. He killed his mum because she didn't buy him an Xbox.
Fuck.
And he stamped his mum. He kicked his mum to death.
Jesus Christ.
I'll not go any further because I'll probably get the video taken down if I tell you what he went on to do.
I don't want to know, mate. I don't want to know. Jesus.
Yeah. But he killed his own mum because she wouldn't buy him an Xbox. He was in the jail, and he ended up in the segregation unit, the care and separation unit. And eventually we had to convince, the jail had to convince the courts that he should not be in jail. He needs to be in a secure hospital. He's now in a maximum security hospital because we could not, for us to go and give him anything, we all had to put the full riot gear on
Yeah.
because he would attack. He would try and attack us.
He obviously just lost
He
any
was
kind of
he was
connection with
he was
reality. He was just,
he was gone. He was gone. I
wow.
mean, I must admit, I shouldn't have done, but I did laugh. One of the prisoners came up with one of the quickest responses ever. He was banging on the door wanting food, and one lad shouted, "Get your mum to make you a chicken dinner." But that's the kind of environment you're in, where you've developed a dark sense of humour.
Jesus
And it was
Christ.
one of the cons shouted, "Get your mum to make you a dinner," and I was like, "Oh!" I turned around and went,
Fucking hell. Yeah, you're not supposed to
"But
laugh at that, mate.
you're not supposed to laugh, but you do."
So, I mean, are there any success stories though? Now that we've thoroughly depressed the shit out of everyone watching this, did anyone do all right out of it?
I do know. I do know two who I've actually bumped into since I've left the jail, who have managed to find income and employment and
Yeah,
gone back. Their families took them back, and I remember with quite a few sitting down having conversations with him, saying, don't you think this should really be a reality check? You're
yeah,
pushing 40, and all you've known is jail.
yeah,
And sometimes the light
yeah,
bulb goes on,
yeah.
and they go. He actually went. He said, "You know what?" He said, "I've worked it out. I've spent 3 days out of every 7 in the last 20 odd years
Fuck.
in
In a jail cell.
in a jail
Yeah,
cell." And he said, "For me, it's become an occupational hazard." I said, "Well, don't you think you should maybe do something constructive?"
yeah. But
And
overall, I get the impression that prison, as we have it set up in this country, and in other
it
countries,
doesn't.
America as well, it just doesn't do the job it's supposed to do.
No, no. I'm a believer that you should come to prison. They say, "Is it there to punish or reform?" And I say both.
Yes.
It
Yeah.
it, it should exist. You should be punished, but then we should reset the dial.
Yeah.
You know,
And
we
make people
went
functional members of society,
society again.
yeah.
But we do that. We do that through education, through training.
Yeah. So
Because
what I was going to mention about that, you're saying pay people to do work, but I would say for the education side of things, you're not up for parole unless you get some
you've
qualifications
done,
under your
yeah,
belt. And it's
yeah,
that's something
totally agree,
that
totally
because it
agree.
shouldn't just be about good behavior. Obviously, that's taken into account.
Yeah,
But this problem, which I see as a huge problem, and it's not just in the UK but all over the world, where you have prisoners getting out, and the first thing they do is they go, "Well, I've got no qualifications. I've got a criminal record. Can't get a job. How do
yeah.
I get the money I need to live? I'll go back on the rob." Do you know what I mean? And you
And
just,
we also need to, and I'm so one thing that Keir Starmer's done that I totally agree with is putting Lord Simpson in charge of
I was
prisons.
going to mention Timson. So this is the shoe
Yeah,
guy. I think he was a Brexiter, but I'm not going to hold that against him at the moment. But he actually knows what he's talking about because he works with a
yeah,
lot of ex prisoners,
yeah.
former prisoners.
And I would be encouraging companies to open up work placements to offenders to
Yeah,
get them into work. But in some cases, what I'd be looking at rather than prison is say, right, you're going to go on, tagging, say, for instance, or some kind of condition like house arrest, but with a condition that you attend education, rehabilitation, employment,
yeah,
rather than prison. We need to be looking at lower people who've done petty crime,
yeah,
rather than sending them to prison. Can we rehabilitate them outside of prison,
yeah, yeah.
but within strict parameters?
I just want to give a big shout out to Hill Gara for becoming a member of the channel. I'm not Lone Star. Thank you. Welcome, welcome. And Paula, thank you so much for the £5 super chat. How is an illiterate and/or innumerate person expected to navigate public transport? Well, how are they supposed to get a job and when they've also got a criminal record as well?
And that's the thing. You've actually got inside the prison. We had people what were called insiders,
Yeah,
and generally they were people. We had on my wing. We had a police officer who was going through a trial and a millionaire who were both very well educated,
yeah,
and they were great at actually helping people who were illiterate within the wing to do things like fill out forms
yeah,
for benefits,
yeah, yeah,
fill an app in, because one of the biggest problems in the jail is healthcare.
yeah,
It now Believe it or not, within a private jail, you had a private company running healthcare. So a private company inside a private company,
Yeah,
and
that's mad.
they were running the healthcare their way. Before I
Wow.
started, Sodexo run its own healthcare and actually had wards within the hospital.
Yeah,
Now, when this new lot came in, they did away with the wards to save money.
yeah.
So if someone has a problem now, you have to call an ambulance. Well, everyone's watched Ambulance and like think on BBC. You hear stories of people on the ground. I guarantee you, there's at least 20 ambulances go to that jail a week,
Right, bloody
at
hell.
least, and
So
especially at nights.
a private prison has private health. I mean, that just
Yeah.
seems like the maddest way to do it. So if you were prime minister tomorrow, would you do away with private jails?
Um. Yes and no. I would make them publicly owned private companies.
What, for profit?
Yeah, because the profit would then go back into the treasury, not into a shareholder's pocket.
Yeah, yeah.
So a publicly owned private company.
Do
Sorry.
you think it's dangerous having something like a prison be set up for profit?
Hmm. But I was certainly because it's supposed to be run because in the jail you have what we call controllers who were employed by the prison
Yeah,
service to make sure you were running it properly.
yeah,
But and they would often give out fines. But Sodexo makes that much money, they can just laugh at the fines.
yeah, yeah.
I mean, this is a company that makes billions,
Well,
not
exactly.
millions.
Yeah. Well, it's the same with the water companies, isn't it? They're like, oh, well, fine. Oh, well, never
Yeah,
mind. How much is it going to
exactly.
cost to
Yeah,
fix this problem? $1 billion. How much is the fine? $1 million. Okay, well, we'll just
I'll
pay the
pay per
fucking fine then.
and
Chrissy,
right off.
thank you very much for the super chat. Public prisons also use private healthcare firms. Yeah.
Yes, they do. It's the same company across
That's
all prison
mad.
estate.
I never knew
Yeah,
that. I'm learning a lot of stuff doing this show.
and it as well as that, it was taking, especially to get dental care, was an
Yeah,
absolute joke.
yeah.
The only time the one person who got dental care in the jail quicker was me when I got smacked in the jaw with a pool ball. The
Ow.
dentist was in the jail, so he had a look at my jaw.
Right.
It turned out I bruised it, not broke it. It was
Oh,
bloody sore though.
fucking hell.
Yeah, pool ball can do a lot of it can do a lot of damage,
Yeah,
can a pool ball.
I can imagine. Are there
Yeah,
any
we were using.
types of?
Yeah,
Sorry, we've got to wrap up
I'll say I was
soon.
using a table as a riot shield.
We got to wrap up soon. So I've still got so many questions to ask though. Paula, thank you very
Go on,
much
ask away, and I'll
for
answer
the
them.
£5 super chat. Would there be a place for citizen advice type service within prisoners and bail hostels?
Yeah, there should be.
Yeah,
I think there should be, and I would. You know what? I would use ex-prisoners to staff them.
that's a good idea. Yeah.
I would use them to staff them because who's better to? It's like you go to Alcoholics Anonymous. Who's
Yeah.
best to ask advice?
Yeah.
Ask an alcoholic.
Are the types of offenders that you think shouldn't be in prison at all?
Yeah, those with mental health conditions. Proper. I mean, some people have got mental health conditions and it can be managed in prison.
Yeah.
But those with chronic problems, yes. I think we're also getting with a lot of things like Operation U Tree. You're finding a lot of older people coming to jail, and they can become a burden because of their age and their
Health
ailments
problems. Yeah.
and health problems. I would maybe look at some kind of like almost like not like a care home, but like a prison that is because are they going to start causing you violence in that? Not really.
No.
Some might, but not many.
That's why the number of serial killers have gone down. It's really hard to serial kill with a Zimmer frame. Anyway, not all boomers. Not all. Okay, getting into so much trouble. Yeah. So the next question I want to ask is about community services, tagging, restorative justice, rehab centres, etc. Do you think they would work better than custodial sentences like what we've got now
Yes,
for things
yes,
like
but
non-violent drugs
yeah.
offences? I'm not just talking about mental health problems.
We actually had restorative justice within the jail, believe it or not. We had people who were RJ champions. So if two prisoners had a problem,
Yeah.
we could actually get them to sit down and explain what had gone on, this, that, and then 9 times out of 10, once they actually got it, aired it all out, they'd gone, yeah, we've both been a pair of idiots, really, haven't we? Well, yeah. Shake hands, get on with it.
Wow.
So I certainly think we can do it, but it needs to be funded properly. Not just it's a nice idea. Here's a bit of money. Get on with it. It needs to be But maybe again, listen to people who've worked in the prison estate, listen to ex-prisoners, and
Yes.
build a program that works.
What
Don't just
what's
come up with an idea.
Yeah, what's your view on short sentences less than 6 months? Do they work? Is there any point?
No, in many
No.
ways, no. Because you can't do much in that period of time with someone. They
What
are definitely less than 6 months. I think you should be looking at community resolutions.
Yeah. So what will the functioning effective justice system to you look like? I mean, obviously we've run out of time here, so we can't do the whole
Yeah,
thing. But what do you
you
think?
come to prison. The first, I believe, in the sharp shock. So you get into prison, and for the first 6 weeks, nothing. You get maybe one visit. You don't get telly. You don't get that. Once you've done your first sort of 5, 6 weeks in the jail,
Yeah.
you then gradually give them an incentive. So you give them a telly, you give them an extra visit, you give them a chance to earn some more money, you give them a chance to go to work, education. Then you
Yeah.
say to them, right, this is your sentence now is 3 years, and by the time you leave this jail, you need to have done MVQ level 2 English and maths, and learn a skill.
Yeah.
Then, and by the way, if you engage with this program of thinking skills, violence reduction, that can then work towards taking time off your sentence.
Yeah.
Because by the time they leave, they've got English, they've got maths, they've got a skill. They might have learned things like going for a job interview, how to apply for housing, yada 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 yada.
Yeah.
They can go out that jail gate thinking, yeah, right, now I can start again. No, I'm out of the jail, I've got nothing.
Yeah.
Right, I might as well commit another crime.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Because
And also jail wasn't that bad for a lot of
yeah,
people. It's like, well, okay,
well, what I
occupational
remember
hazard.
one guy saying to me that jail to him was like a 5-star hotel because he had a telly, a shower, a gym,
Yeah.
and a doctor.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what we need. That's what we need to break and
Yeah.
get rid of.
Absolutely. Well, also that needs to go in with better mental health care across the board, not just in jails, but just across
Yeah,
society. Help for people who are homeless, which is massive. I mean, obviously, if you are homeless, it's going to be in your interest to commit a crime and end up in jail because then you'll stay warm in the winter. You won't freeze to death in a doorway.
we used to get seasonal criminals who would commit
Yeah.
crime around Christmas
Yeah.
just to spend Christmas in jail.
Yeah. Yeah, it's nice and warm. Well, I mean, it's not
Warmer.
great, is it? But I can see why
No,
someone would
but
think it was a 5-star hotel compared with sleeping on the streets. So, yeah. So so we'd have that as an effective, a functioning effective justice system. We'd have a lot more emphasis on sort of stuff where we are trying to rehabilitate people as well, but also what about on the sort of whole not getting people to commit crimes in the first place? What do you think is sort of the important shit there to sort of make crime?
make sure that people have got. We need to look around the communities that were decimated by. I'm going to go back to Thatcher, the thing she did, decimate the North and the Midlands. We need to look at making sure people are leaving school with basic skills in English, maths,
Yeah,
especially English and maths, and encourage people into vocational skills that are relevant for the 21st century.
yeah,
Make sure
that
people are
they're good
literate around
at.
computers
Yeah,
that you're good at. Yeah, everyone. I always say this, everyone is good at something.
yeah, yeah. And you shouldn't be forced to
Everyone.
do the stuff you're shit at. Okay, you need basic maths, you need basic English just to get by
Yeah,
the days. But like everything else, mate, why are you trying to teach people who are really good, can strip down a motorbike and put it back together in an afternoon? Why are you teaching them French when they're shit at French? They hate it. They can't get their head around why a table is masculine or feminine. Stop trying to teach them. Oh, sorry, it's a little bugbear of
yeah,
mine.
yeah. I know. I mean, I know plenty of people, and not just people who come to jail. You tell them to walk 8 miles and build you a wall. They'll walk 8 miles and build you a wall.
Yeah,
Ask them to tell you how to do it. They go,
yeah, yeah.
they
That's kind
walk.
of
They would
crazy,
walk,
isn't it?
but they wouldn't think to say get a taxi or get a bus. They
Yeah,
walk
yeah.
and build you a wall and probably take the bricks with them.
Just quickly before we go, because I'm trying to wrap it up at 20 past.
Yeah.
Is the new Labour government's early release scheme? Do you see this as a necessary evil, or is
Yes,
it cop
I
out?
do. I do. Unfortunately, they can't. And I've said this to people who are criticising the government. You can't come in after 14 years with the Tories fucking it up
Yeah,
and wave a magic wand and hope it all goes away.
yeah.
Their hands were tied, and
Yeah.
I don't think they had any alternative.
Fair enough. I mean, I can't argue with that because I feel the same way. That the state of
You
this
can't
country that the Tories
you
left.
can't
Oh
build
my God.
you can't build a prison overnight.
Yeah.
It took them 3 years to build the latest new prison, and that's already on its backside.
Do you think there's any way of really getting the sort of the public and the media on board to understand this isn't about being like soft on crime, which they go fucking crazy about, and it's about fixing a system that is broken.
That's already
it's
broke.
Not working.
As long as the Tory client media are pumping out their right-wing crap, then you're up against it, because you're trying to explain to people that the system was broken and Labour's inherited a mess, and they can't just wave a wand and make it all better.
Yeah,
it's going to take. I don't think it'll take 10. I think it'll take 20 years to fix the mess they made.
Jesus Christ! It's a lot easier to break stuff, isn't it, than to build stuff.
They made a mess. They made a mess. They broke something that didn't need fixing. Things were going quite well when they took over.
Yeah,
and
it's a Tory way,
they managed to break it.
Yeah.
And I said this to my Tory MP. I really thought, and he kept going, "Well, the mess we inherited." I went, "What mess?"
Yeah.
Labour left you a perfectly functioning country.
Yeah.
You managed to fuck it up, aiding and abetted by the Lib Dems for 5 years.
Yeah.
Because I don't absolve the Lib Dems of any great blame either, because they were partly to blame for it as well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a ridiculous system, but hopefully this has given some ideas to people watching to go and have a chat with their MP or their elected representatives and see if we can change things, see if we can get these ideas out there into the ether. So thanks very much, Gareth, for joining us this evening.
Welcome.
Talk about. Thank you for your honesty and your insight. We could talk all night. There's loads of stuff that I've got.
A big, but the Grand Prix.
Loads of questions, but the Grand Prix is on tonight at 7. So also tonight, Katie Montgomery's just dropped a video. So if you want to go and watch that, please do after this. Also 8:00 tonight. It's Tan's birthday. It's Super Tansky's birthday. She's doing a birthday solo live stream at 8:00. Unfortunately, Gareth's going to be watching the F1, so he's going to miss it.
Yeah. Happy birthday, Tan, if you're watching. But you're competing with the Grand Prix, and being a petrol head, I'm gonna. And if everyone's watching the touring cars next week, I'll probably be on it because it's an open park, and I'll be on the telly.
Oh, fantastic! Will you be the one arguing with a Trump voter at the side of the track?
I don't think he's coming. I think he's on holiday, actually. But I was telling Graham beforehand, there was 4 of us on the Marshall Post yesterday. 3 of us couldn't stand Trump, 1 did. We spent longer arguing about Trump than actually watching what was going on the track.
Good job no one died, Gareth.
We actually had a car roll over and we had to stop the argument and go and respond to it. The guy was all right.
Just wait a minute.
Just wait a minute. And then we came back and carried on the argument.
Anyway, if anyone's seen the footage of Trump's rally yesterday, God, it's hilarious. Someone's pointed out that the noise that the tank makes as it squeaks down the street, that's going to be the new replacement sound for crickets. When like nobody laughs at a joke, it'll be that sound effect of that squeak going down the street with nobody watching it. Anyway,
no, thanks for having me, Graham. It's been really good to get this. I mean, I've been wanting to say what I wanted to say for a long time, so it's how to help with my therapy, because I mean, people don't understand how stressful it is of a job, and I wish anyone who's working in a prison the very best. But I got out because it had burnt my head out, and my head was gone.
So you're back onto the trucks now, aren't you? You're driving.
Yeah, back on the wagons Monday to Friday. No weekends, no late nights. I'm home every night. Less money, but a lot less stress.
Yeah. And it's mental health, mate. You know, there's no money.
People who knew me, when your wife, your sister, your minister at church, and people who know you say, Gareth, you look ill, get out.
Yeah.
And I went, is it worth it?
No.
Is it worth it? And at that point, I had to say, no.
There's no amount of money that is worth more than your health. It's as simple as that.
And there's no support. There's very little support for staff as well.
Something else we could get into.
Yeah, I could be here all night, but
we've got a Grand Prix to watch, and Tan's going to be on at 8 o'clock, and I'm going to produce that show. So thanks very much, Gareth. Thank you everyone for watching. Thanks for all the super chats and the chats in general. Give us a like if you like this. We'll try and make some more episodes of how we fix Britain. And until next time, I'll say thanks for watching. Hello, good evening, welcome, and goodbye. Bye.